Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 most forgotten Ark tames, so there's no point time wasting, let's just get straight into it. In at number 10 we have got the Achatina, and you know, this creature is often forgotten about by most Ark players, and although it isn't potentially the most useful, I do think a lot of Ark players forget it exists, even though it's pretty much the top of every creature list when it comes to the alphabetical. These things are obviously the best for gathering all things cementing paste, although most people will use a beetles these days with some insects or beaver dams, but this will do it passively, of course. But apart from that, it doesn't gain much notoriety, which is why it's on this list. Next up, we have got the Pachy, and I really feel like this creature doesn't get enough attention, and I think that's partly because of just its poor design is in general as a creature. This thing isn't really loved the most by Ark players, as it is a little bit of a pain to tame and they don't really have many uses. Although yes, they can deal some torpor damage, they really don't, you know, amount to anything in the long run. And considering taming them is just not great in the first place, it's not really worth having one even. And, you know, with the Pachy spawning on the island, it is one of those tames where you think it might be popular as a small beginner starting mount. But no, this thing is just simply not used. I think a bit of TLC could go a long way with this dino. But after all, I don't really think this is going to get used unless a update happens to it, because it just isn't a great creature at the moment. While it can deal torpor damage with its little chargy thing, it isn't very fast and it is just a pain to tame, and it takes frankly too long to tame for its size and where you'll be taming it relative to the game. Coming up next we have got the Phoenix, and this is really a good shout in my opinion, as considering how rare this creature is to tame in the first place, most Ark players haven't even seen one of these things in the flesh. To start with, Scorched Earth isn't a very popular map anymore, and you know, across all time, Scorched Earth hasn't been a very popular map anyway, and for that reason it also makes the Phoenix even less likely to be tamed. There was probably a little bit of a regeneration when Scorched Earth came around, and then obviously you could tame this thing on ASA's version of Scorched Earth, and obviously when the initial release came out. But considering their slightly abnormal taming methods and the fact that you have to do it within certain conditions, that is the reason why these creatures are largely forgotten about. While the fact that they can smelt things in their inventory is a pretty nice ability to have, I don't think it's worth it for most people to go through all the hassle. The only people really taming these things are people who really just want the Phoenix for whatever reason, or people who just want to tame every dino. In number 7 we have got the Dorphodon, and this is a little bit of a shame in my opinion, as the Dorphodon has a lot of potential and actually can be pretty useful in some given scenarios, dealing damage to riders and not the creatures that the players are actually riding, getting them off the tames quicker. This is especially useful in a lot of PvP combat scenarios, but I just think maybe the game has out-evolved them a little bit, and that's why they're sort of left in the dust and no one really pays any attention to them. And I think it is a little bit sad with this creature, as more is deserved. Coming up next we have got the Pelagornis, and I think the reason why I've put this here is it's pretty overshadowed by a lot of the other Ark tames which you'll find out there. The Pelagornis is a little bit of a pain to tame compared to some others, and it usually isn't the one you'll first go for. Of course you go for the Pteranodon first, because the Pelagornis saddle is unlocked after the Pteranodon, and once you've got Pteranodon you're probably going to progress up to an RG. The Pelagornis is never really a step for anyone, and although they are one of the few flyers, if not only flyer, that can glide along the top of the water and gather fish out from it, it is still maybe not a useful enough skill, because you're never really taking your flyer to water, you're taking your flyer to get around places. And although the Pelagornis has a pretty cool model and it's got some great design and actually can be pretty speedy in a lot of cases, it is severely overshadowed by the far more popular Pteranodon and Argentavis, and it sort of does make sense for this creature. I don't really have a use for it, but it is very cool in concept, and I do really like the model for this creature, and it is a nice one which will occasionally tame, because I just feel like maybe I want one. But I get, for most people, including myself, it's never really something I even think of, let alone consider, which is why I would consider this Ark creature as forgotten. Coming in at number 5, we have got the Diplocaulus, and, you know, considering this creature, I think originally it was a lot more popular than it is today, because essentially this acts as a portable diving suit, which is pretty neat when you think about it on concept, and you think people would be using this thing a lot, but considering it spawns in the swamp and its tame method isn't so desirable, it really isn't tamed by many, and Sarcos and just general underwater tames that you'll find in the ocean are much more preferable compared to this thing, and you can just put a scuba tank on your back and you don't have to worry about the whole oxygen thing. But I do think they do have some use if you don't have that oxygen tank, if, you know, leveling just takes ages on whatever server you're on, but largely people don't tame them. The Eurypterid is up next, because why wouldn't it be? After all, the only reason why you'd be going for this creature is black pearls, and that's the reason why I haven't put it right at the bottom of the list, because it does have some sort of use, which is the black pearl gathering. These things just linger at the bottom of the ocean, like you can see here. This is a force tend one, which is why it's not moving, but I'll get it to follow me around in a second. But yeah, I just never think about these things until I was putting together this list, and I was like, oh yeah, the Eurypterid exists. It's one of those creatures which I barely ever come across, and even if I do see one, I'll just be like, I won't even take notice of it even, and occasionally be like, oh yeah, Eurypterid's in the game. It's to the point where I always forget they exist, and when I was making this video, it was the last thing I put on the list, because I realized, oh yeah, these things exist. But considering their black pearl use, it's why I'm putting them in the number 4 spot and not anywhere else, because I don't think it's quite deserved to put it a little bit further down, as some people do use them. At number 3, we're gonna put the Lamprey. And the reason why I'm putting this here as well is it does have a slight use on Ab, sort of enacting as a temporary light pet, but it's not really something which I consider, and I've never used one in my whole Ark playing. I obviously had to spawn this thing in because they don't really spawn on general maps, at least as far as I'm concerned. They definitely do spawn on Ab, but no one's really using them apart from that one use occasionally. Again, it's good in concept and they're a cool, neat little creature, but they're really not something which I think people think about, and certainly I don't think about. And after all, it is my list, even though sadly this is the only creature in this video that managed to actually get me killed. At number 2, we have got the Ammonite, and all you know these creatures for is when you go near them, you hit them, everything else aggroes onto it. It's sort of like the Eurypterid. Again, these things hang at the bottom of the ocean, but they have even less use than the Eurypterid. But if you didn't know already, if you do force tell one of these things, you can get some pretty disturbing, let's say, riding animations. And with my really derpy character, you know, there's a lot of fun in recording this B-roll, and I was just like, what the hell is going on when I was recording this? And I knew it happened because I made a short about it way back last year, I think. But it still is funny to see that you can do this, and this is about the only notable thing I can say about the Ammonite. Don't think anyone thinks about them. Considering they're one of the most popular or just well-recognised fossils in the world, it is a little bit of a letdown that they're so forgotten in art, but at least you have this derpy riding animation. And in number 1, we have got the Liopleurodon. This was sort of a balance between, like, forgotten and useless in a way, because there is no use for this thing, and its taming method is horrible, and I do not wish anyone out there to tame it. Also, for some reason, a Megalodon spawned in just randomly and then started to fight this as well, which sort of interrupted the B-roll. But there we go. You can watch this little fight in action. But the Liopleurodon is tamed with giant bee honey, which is a pain to get in the first place. And, you know, even if you do get that, you probably don't want to use it on a Liopleurodon. It's a tame that lasts for 30 minutes, and it improves the loot you can get from deep sea drops. But I basically never go deep sea dropping, and the drops on Gen 2 are good enough anyway, and on ASA they're pretty decent, and I can just put the drop rates up if I really want that, and I use the upgrade station mod anyway to upgrade all my gear. I know no one out there is really using these things apart from the occasional people and the people who just have to tame every Ark creature for the sense of achievement. But apart from that, it's such a forgotten Ark tame, and I think it should stay that way. but if it did get TLC, it's a really nice model and a pretty cool creature. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I really hope that you all did enjoy, as this was a amazing one to film, and I want to see if you agree with my list. If you don't, comment your thoughts down below, and if not, I'm going to see you all in the next one. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Macy, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.